no matter how well prepared, rushing, and their voice, they just speak very fast, in fact, too fast. Do you have a view that a speaker should be the tempo in which they speak, that they work their way through an idea and what they're saying in a measured way rather than speeding through it simply because they've got a lot of content to get through?
Yeah, this is often a problem with a lot of conferences and presentations. The notion, and I know it's extremely tempting as a presenter to speed up what you're talking about and briefly skip over things. And I'll draw back to some of the points I made before about being absolutely clear how long your presentation goes. So if you're confident through all your practice and rehearsals that your presentation is 30 minutes, you've got 30 minutes allocated to you. However, the speaker before you went 10 minutes over time and the coordinator said, no, Kevin, we're breaking for lunch at 12:30. I want you to finish at 12:30, which essentially leaves you 20 minutes to do your 30-minute presentation. So by saying that, be ready for it and be ready to cut out certain sections of your presentation so you can maintain control on your body, on your voice, and you can also be clear. I'd also suggest, if that is the environment you go in, put your content on some sort of printout. So if there's content that you needed or wanted to share that you weren't verbally able to deliver, you can tell your audience, just as they're getting restless and ready to run out of the auditorium for lunch, you can say, folks, there's a couple of other added points that might provide value to this presentation. They're on the handout. Feel free to have a look at that. And that will cover that notion. It'll help you feel more relaxed as a speaker, and it'll take that stress away of trying to fit 30 minutes into 20 minutes.
That's great advice, particularly I know if I can smell lunch, then there's no way in the world I'm staying in that seminar.
Yes.
I'm out there to get the lunch, ahead of the queue, because that's where the best food is. You know? I always judge a conference or a seminar by the quality of the food and the lunch, Kevin.
Absolutely.
Now, Kevin, I just want to move on to whether, I suppose, talking a bit about visual aids and the use of technology. Yes. You mentioned PowerPoint presentations, the ubiquitous PowerPoint presentations, but I wonder if you can talk about the use of visual aids technology during a presentation, and also what you've also mentioned, and that is the use of handouts and workbooks.
Sure.
As part of the role of a good public speaking engagement.
Indeed. This is where that trips up a lot of speakers that are extremely well prepared, they've rehearsed, they've practiced. They get to the venue, they see the coordinator, or there might be an events person there at the venue, and you start asking them about, is there connectivity happening with the PowerPoints? I've got a laptop with me, I've got my device with me that I want to hook up. Invariably and often there is problems with connectivity.
Yes.
So what happens is, as people are starting to drift in and you're getting stressed, more and more stressed in terms of what's going on, the visuals are not working. So important to get there extremely early.
Yes, preparation, isn't it, Kevin?
Yeah. And not only the visuals, but there's the audio. So if you've got a presentation where you want to run a video, say a 2 or 3 minute video as part of your presentation, that introduces the audio notion. So make sure that the audio is also functioning. How many times have you been to a presentation and they've clicked on the video, the video's not working or the sound's not working? Hey? And here's an interesting concept. When these things happen, and invariably things will happen, that the audience will be looking at you thinking it's your fault. Yes. They won't be looking out for the AV person or the coordinator or the MC. It'll be your fault. Yeah. So you have to take responsibility for this. And as you say, Paul, preparation, get there early, get it organised.
Okay, well, that's the things that can go wrong, but a very important tool to engage an audience surely is the use of visual aids and technology. How much do you invest or include within your public speaking some of those visual aids? For example, do you sing a song? Do you do you include your favourite? Do you include a audio of classical music or popular music? Do you have an interlude into some other speaker that you connect to, or do you use powerful technology which has visual effects to engage and keep them engaged?
Definitely, the idea of using sound and music is effective. I've not done a lot of it, to be honest. I've relied on my verbal skills, but I've seen other presenters do it with great effect, where they will play the start of a popular tune. Anthony Robbins, the motivational speaker, you might recognise. I recall him when he does his shows. He'll have somebody like Madonna or something doing one of those dance themes. He'll get people standing up, doing stretches, limbering up. Oh, he does, and everybody's buying in. But look, it's fun and it's engaging.
Okay.
It's not for everybody, but yes, the use of that sort of technology can be great. But the more layers of technology you want to use, that just adds that layer of complexity and things that can go wrong. Paul, you mentioned before, and I do apologise, what is about handouts, managing handouts. The notion of handouts is absolutely fantastic. A couple of tips on handouts. If you've got a handout or a workbook or a multiple page thing, what I would highly recommend is only distribute those handouts when you start talking about the particular points in it. Let's take the example that you're talking about financial performance of your company or budgets coming into the new financial period, let's say, and presumably there'll be some sort of table or spreadsheet with some data on that. What I would highly recommend, until you get to that portion in your talk where you're going to introduce this sort of stuff, then distribute the handout and everybody follow it along with you. Now, a couple of things here to consider. If you give people that handout or any handouts book at the beginning, what are they going to do?
Oh, well, they're clearly going to open it up and skim through it and start reading it.
And precisely. They're going to ignore you. So that's to manage that is you don't give them until you want them to see it.
Yeah, okay. Well, would that be also sound advice, for example, if you're at a seminar, you're actually wanting to sell something, whether it's a book, a presentation, or a podcast maybe, Kevin? Subscription to a podcast.
Who'd be crazy enough to do that?
Who'd be crazy enough, I know, exactly. I presume you would make reference to that in the same way as that you can get it from, you can access that after or you follow this link, or you can get things after this presentation.
Indeed.
Okay, all right.
Indeed.
Okay, great. Can I move on now? Can I talk a bit about, or get you to talk about, not me, the way in which it comes back to engagement of the audience again. And I think a lot of these things you've said, Kevin, which are incredibly important, they all, in many ways, come back to the question about how do we engage the audience that you're speaking to listen and to learn and to understand and do often what you're talking to them about, to learn from what you're doing. And that comes down to a few techniques and skills. So I want to drill down around, if you may, around these skills. For example, icebreakers and energizers and handling questions. So maybe if we start to managing icebreakers.
Okay, good. An icebreaker is fantastic in terms of breaking people's mindset. If they've been in an auditorium for many hours or a handful of hours, you come on, they're still sitting there, they start to disengage. So if you can do a brief icebreaker with the audience, that'll get them engaged and feeling good about hearing what you have to say. A couple of techniques that I quickly suggest is turn to the person behind you and shake their hands and say hello.
Okay.
If you've got the room, the space, get people to stand up, move around, introduce themselves to somebody they don't know, maybe exchange contact details, and then come back to your seat. Just something simple to get them out of their seat, moving around, having a smile, having a laugh, and then sitting back down. There's a couple of icebreakers there. Paul, in terms of engaging the audience so they're presumably learning things during your presentation, is during your presentation, if you've got time and the content is appropriate, just pause and tell them to have a chat to the person next to you and say, what have you remembered from the talk over the last 10 minutes? What do you recall? What's some of the key points the speaker spoke about? And just let them have that 30, 60, 90 seconds window of time So they have that sort of discussion. Just
Okay.
breaks it up. And for you as a public speaker, it gives you a chance to take a breath and get back on track.
What about what we talk about energising? Because I certainly, the things you've talked about, I see that actually happening more and more at, for example, sporting events.
Oh, yeah.
If I go to the football, the soccer, or any event, basketball, there's lots of that in the breaks between the event itself. And it's often, a lot of people do like it. But do you have anything about, I mean, the concept of energising, is icebreakers, energisers, we're talking about the same thing there, or is there a differentiation?
Well, that's good that you've identified there could be differences there. I'm making the assumption you've got an audience of 100 people
Right.
in an auditorium. When you've got a smaller workshop, say 15 people to 25, and you're in a room, and it might be a little bit more intimate in terms of the discussions you have. In those circumstances, you could run far more lengthy icebreakers and discussion groups. A fantastic icebreaker I've found, and we're all different, so we will all lean to different icebreakers and energizers differently. But a good one I have, when I have about 15 people in the audience, and most of them don't know each other, and I don't know them, so you get them to introduce themselves, and you get them to tell them 3 unique things about themselves. One of them has to be a lie.
Okay.
And
All right.
as you go around the room,
Well, I'm good at that. I do well in your thing. I do nothing but lie.
and it just stimulates so much laughter and so much fun, and people have got some extraordinary stories to tell.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a really good one.
Paul, just on that, sorry
Sure.
to cut you off. There's some really good published books by McGraw-Hill
Yeah.
on games trainers play. Now, those books, they're available online and in some of the major libraries and university libraries. Those books contain appropriate icebreakers, energizers for small groups, such as 10, 15, 20 people, up to multiple thousands of people. So you read through those books, they're very well laid out that you can use.
Okay, so what's the title of those again? It's McGraw-Hill's the publisher. What was
Yes.
the title you just said?
Correct me, some of the listeners might correct me if I'm wrong. Games trainers play.
Okay, all right.
And
Well, if
then
they
there's
search
more.
that,
Yeah,
if they
and
search
there's-
that, they'll probably find
Yep.
where. Okay. Can I get you to talk a bit about how you would handle and manage questions? Because let's visualise where we're at in a presentation. They're engaged. You've told them what you're going to talk about. You have talked about it. Now, and you explain the lessons or the takeaways from it, which is you tell them what you've just told them. Now, that's usually question time. Often you might take questions during a session, and maybe you want to talk about when you take questions as well. But the question I've got for you is, how do you handle and manage questions from your audience?
That's good. And let's make the assumption, we'll go back to your point if people ask a question in the middle of your presentation. But let's go to the point, during your introduction phase, I'd suggest, again, under this assumption you've got 30, 40 minutes to speak, so it's not a lot of time. During that phase you would say, I'm going to open this up for questions at the end. So in your audience's mind, they're thinking to themselves, I'm going to ask this guy a question, I think, this person a question. So they're ready for a task at the end. Okay. So in terms of managing those questions, when you do invite the audience to start asking questions, my advice would be, and Doug Maloof mentioned this very well in his book, don't ask me what that's called. Doug Maloof, some of you will be familiar with. Instead of asking who's got any questions, request the audience to, anybody got any thoughts, ideas or questions? This opens it up and takes the pressure off a lot of people, because a lot of people are thinking, well, I don't have a question, but I want to say something. So by opening up, that does ease it. Now, in terms of, invariably, there is sometimes silence. And for you as the speaker, it's important for you to shut up. As you be quiet, because you put the question to your audience, they'll start feeling the pressure to ask a question, and invariably they will. So in terms of managing that, listen to the person asking the question. Now, if it's an auditorium of 100 people, usually people that ask the question are in the front part of the audience. And what happens to the poor people towards the back? they don't hear the question.
Mm.
So in terms